This story was submitted by ToxicRosie. First off, I want to say that there are a lot of druggies on my street and the street over. There has also been a significant amount of cars stolen, including my neighbors, so I always keep all doors and windows locked. Plus, I'm a girl. I was watching short films from competitions to get a gist of my soon-to-come short. This was at around 1 a.m. I heard a light tapping, and I paused the video, thinking that if I didn't hear it again, that it was just the wind. But no. After a few seconds, I heard it again. My bedroom has the largest window in the house, facing towards the main road, and my bed is against it. I had been sitting on the floor, facing away from the window. I turned towards it, and saw the outline of a man tapping on the window. Out of nowhere, he slammed his palm on my window, making me jump, and then walked off. I immediately texted my friend Hannah. I told her, "Dude, there's someone tapping on my window." She sent back an LOL, but I told her that I was serious and I was freaking the hell out. She told me to stay calm and tell her everything that is happening. As I was telling her about it, the man had come back, and he was tapping again. The cycle of tapping for a full minute, then hitting once, then walking away, continued multiple times. Eventually he just stopped and stared. At this point, Hannah was scared to death, and I was pissed. I stared at him for a good 2 minutes before he finally spoke. His voice was sickening, and it sounded as if he had eaten nothing but sandpaper and concrete for the last 3 weeks. He said a few things I could understand, such as,
"Fucking kill you,"
and
"You just wait."
the second I told Hannah about this, she told me to call my boyfriend immediately. My boyfriend John is a tall and pretty strong guy, and he wasn't afraid to punch someone in the nose for creeping either. I called John, and he tried to seem as strong and calm as he normally is, but his voice failed him on some occasions. At this point, the guy was fucking pounding on my window. All I could think of was getting out the back door and running to my neighbor's house. But then I thought the guy would chase after me. Eventually, after a lot of pounding, he left down the street. I wish I could say that was the end of it, but no, of course not. At about 3 a.m. I woke up and went to the kitchen to get a drink of water. I took a cup from the cupboard and began filling it with water when I heard the tapping again. My blood ran cold and I froze in place. I slowly turned towards the back door and switched the porch light on. There, face right up to the door, was the guy. I could actually get a good look of him now. He was a bit scraggly and wore a blue hoodie that covered his brown hair, a red shirt under that, and black pants. He was just standing there, constantly making a horrible shh sound. He was grinning this horrifying smile, showing teeth that looked like they had practically been brushed with crack. Then I saw it. In his hand he held a fucking crowbar. I could have sworn that there was blood on it, but in the darkness it just faded into the rust. I ran to the knife drawer without taking my eyes off the man and grabbed a random knife. Luckily it was sharp, but it was small. The blade was like 5 inches. I showed it to the guy, and he put his fingers to his lips while backing away. Then he bolted, jumping my fence. I'm still scared that he's going to come back. He was a lot scarier than I described him here, and I still get nightmares about him. This story was submitted by Kyla Bree. I want to start out by stating that I am a 17-year-old female. I was staying over at my best friend's house at the time, and her mom was too occupied with her new boy candy to really give us any attention. They were going out that night, so my friend Skylar and I were fairly excited to be home alone. She lives in a slightly secluded area on a backwoods type of road, the type where the neighbors are a good mile or two away, and her house is huge. 3 levels, and it has a ton of rooms and a lot of halls with twists and turns. We were usually stuck with her little sister, so hearing that we were going to be home alone was pretty exciting. They left around noon, so we started off by gathering snacks and drinks and tucked ourselves in her room, which is in the basement. All was well, until it was around nighttime and dark. Skylar and I were binge watching American Horror Story and some cheap horror flicks, and after a while we grew bored and tried to think of what to do. Eventually we decided to take a walk. Now, I know that sounds stupid, 2 17-year-old girls walking out alone at night, but we weren't really thinking. So there we were laughing, joking, and talking when a silver SUV drives by. We really thought nothing of it because we were walking on a road, which is where cars drive. Growing up in the house I did, I was always taught to stay vigilant and aware of my surroundings, so when the SUV passed again, I started to get a little on edge. The windows were tinted, so I couldn't see in or how many people were inside. We were coming up on a park that's near her house, so I figured we should be good once we get in there. I didn't point out to Skylar that the SUV passed twice because I knew I would have freaked her out, and she is the type to overreact. Once we reached the park, everything was good for a while, until we heard the sound of wheels on gravel. Looking up from my swing, surprise, surprise, the SUV. I stared at the car with Skylar as we waited for the lights to turn off, and they soon did. Then an older man, somewhere in his 30s, got out. I remember exactly what he looked like. He was dark-skinned with a few tattoos on his neck, and he was wearing a stained navy blue shirt with some ripped khakis. He almost looked homeless. He walked to the opening of the playground and just stared at us for a good solid minute. I let my confidence build up for a bit and yelled at him in the most intimidating voice my 17-year-old self could muster up. "Can I help you?" Almost immediately after, like he was expecting that question, he laughed a raspy smoker laugh. "Me and my wife are lost. Can you get in the car and give us some directions? I'll give you a ride home after." I felt a small chill run up my spine due to the way he said this sentence, like he was pushing too hard to make it believable. I knew that Skylar and I were like caged animals at this point, because the park only has one opening and a 5-foot fence that goes all the way around. I looked at him as I tried to think. He obviously knew we were alone, because he saw us walking. "Well, can you?" he repeated with a fake raspy laugh. Almost as if on cue, my text message alert went off. I quickly slid my hand into my pocket and brought my phone to my ear. "Oh, hey, Dad. Yeah, we're just down the road at the park. Yeah, we would love to go out to dinner tonight. You'll be here in a minute or two? Okay," I said in a fake happy, cheerful tone. I slid my phone back into my pocket and looked up to say something to the man like, "Sorry, my dad's going to be here soon," or something like that. But by the time I did, the man was already shutting the car door. As the car turned, the passenger side window was down and I could see another man, scraggly and homeless looking, just glaring at me. As I watched them speed off, I grabbed Skylar's arm and we ran as fast as we could back to the house. Fast forward about a week, and I was watching the news when I almost shit my pants. The same dark-skinned man with the tattoos I had met at the park was arrested for human trafficking underage girls. His name is Matthew Brown. After having my panic attack, I was so thankful that I had thought on my feet and pretended to receive that call.
This story was submitted by Sabastian Daniels and is told from a female's perspective. When I was a kid, my dad and I lived with my grandparents for a while. My dad had just broken up with his girlfriend of 7 years and had left the house to her. She kept all of the other kids except for me, since she wasn't my biological mother. My real mom couldn't take care of me since she was too busy shooting up meth, so I stayed with my dad. My grandparents' house was a large house in the middle of nowhere. The entire house was built out of wood and sheetrock, and the outside was this dark wooden color. And so were the areas that hadn't been covered with sheetrock as a design quirk. Everything was always settling, as the house was very old. It also had this eerie vibe of stillness, even when there were people home. Every single decoration that my grandparents set up was old and looked like it belonged in a museum. My room was in the basement. It was a house where the basement was half underground, half above ground, so the large living room windows looked higher than usual. But the worst thing was that my large bedroom window was set directly on ground level. Like I said, this house was out in the middle of nowhere, so when it got dark, it got really dark. There were trees surrounding the house in all directions, as the driveway wasn't even a straight path out. It curved through the forest before meeting the main road. There were all sorts of weird things that happened in this house. Owls would fly at the side of the house and kill themselves for one. And there were frequent power outages during even the most normal weather. I was home alone a lot. My dad worked all the time, and my grandparents are the weird old couple who still go out on dates. I think it's really cute, but they were gone fairly frequently. We didn't have any animals at the time, so when I was alone, I felt really alone. Now, the bedroom that I was in shared a wall with the laundry room, but the laundry room was only accessible if you walked out of my room, up the stairs towards the front door, turned around and walked up to the second floor on the other flight of steps, and took a left and opened the door at the end of the living room, and from there you would have to turn right and find another staircase. Directly in front of the door, however, was a crawl space with a lot of old junk piled up. The whole area was just filled with this eerie sense of history, like a haunted attic. Anyway, if you turned right and went down the second set of stairs, you would walk into another basement area. It also led to a side door, and a lot of times, my dad would forget to lock this door. Also, don't ask me why the builders decided to set up the house this way, because yes, I think it's weird too. Anyway, the laundry room was far away, but was right on the other side of my wall. Whenever people would do laundry, I could hear them climbing the creaky steps or slamming the door of the dryer, etc. So one day I was home alone after school and was sitting on my bed drawing when I heard someone knock on the front door. I peered out the window and saw someone standing there. Being 15, I thought I was old enough to be an adult. I got up and went to go answer the door. The door was a wooden door with large glass windows on either side, and the top half of the door is glass, so I could easily see who it was at the door, but they could also see me, as they were right in front of the door. Knowing that I had been spotted, I walked closer to the door. It was thankfully locked. There was a man standing there. He was white and had a large beard and brown messy hair. He was dressed in a flannel shirt and overalls. He literally looked like a lumberjack. I was going to open the door, but then he stepped up to it so quickly that I was thrown off. I just stood there while he waited there, almost expectingly, like he was entitled to come in. I decided not to open the door. "Hello," I called out hesitantly.
Hey, is Mary home?
Mary is almost my grandmother's name. Her name is Mary Lou. Anyhow, I stupidly supplied this man with her name, saying, "Do you mean Mary Lou?"
Yeah.
He said, lifting his hand to the doorknob to try it. I stared at him through the glass, not knowing what to say.
I think I got her mail by accident. Could she come to the door so I can talk to her?
"They're not home," I stupidly replied. The man smiled.
And they left a pretty young thing like you home alone?
I didn't say anything for a while, and then said, "If you want, you can leave the mail on the step, and then I'll let them know that you stopped by." The man stared, but finally nodded.
Okay, you have a good day.
He sat the mail down and left. I later found out that it was just a piece of junk mail. I told my grandparents, and they told me that they didn't know anybody who matched that description. Now, since we lived out in the middle of nowhere, I didn't have anything to occupy my time, so I took up a hobby. I would polish long branches that I found in the forest and would make staffs out of them. I would spend a lot of time in the woods listening to music and twirling the staffs in my hands and learning how to toss them, catch them, and twirl them with one hand in front of me, and all sorts of other things. I gotten really good after a while. One day I was doing this when the same man approached me. I had my headphones in, so I didn't hear him walking up to me. He told me again that he was my neighbor, and he had seen me from his section of the woods and wanted to ask me about my staff. I'm not really social, so I basically just stared at him throughout the conversation, casually spinning my staff every now and again, in a way that I knew it would make a loud and intimidating whooshing sound as it cut through the air. I wanted this creep to know that I knew how to use it. Eventually, he just nodded and left. I kind of felt like I had been a little bit of a jerk, but I just shrugged it off, thinking that he had no business to come walk into our section of the woods and just talk to a teenage girl. Several weeks later, I was home alone again and was drawing on my computer when I heard the bottom two stairs creak from the wall that I shared with the laundry room. I froze, wondering who this could be. I got up to peer out my window to check to see if my dad's car was there. I hadn't heard the front door open, which is the door that my grandparents usually used when they came home, so I knew it probably wasn't them. I checked out the window, and I didn't see my dad's car anywhere. I stared nervously out the window until I saw a man walking out of the side door and cutting through the woods away from our house. I panicked and waited for a while until I picked up my staff and walked around the house, locking every door and window. My cell phone was in my bra, just in case I needed to call 911. I had almost forgotten about the incident until several months later. I was trying to sleep when I heard someone tapping on my glass. I got up, and thankfully I had shut my curtains earlier on that day. I was creeped out at the idea of things being able to see me while I slept. I waited and heard the tapping again. I moved to the other side of the window, where the tapping wasn't coming from, and without touching the curtains, I pressed my face close to the wall so that maybe I could peer through the sliver of a gap between the curtain and the wall. I saw that same man knocking on my window. Panicking, I backed away and left my room, heading for the storage closet that was right next to it and under the stairs. I used my phone as a light and crammed myself between two boxes and pressed myself down as far as I could. I was horrified to hear the laundry room steps creaking. Even though I was in the next room over, I waited, holding my breath as I heard the ceiling creak. Slowly, as if the person was trying to figure out the strange layout of the house. Then I heard the stairs above me creaking. I panicked as I realized that this man was coming down to the basement where I was hiding. Then, suddenly, I heard his steps quicken and the front door open and shut. A few minutes later, I heard my grandparents come home, and this guy had pretended to wait at the front door. My grandparents didn't think anything of the door being unlocked when they got home, and they believed his story, that he had just knocked on the door and was about to leave when he saw them. He acted friendly and confident, not at all like a man who almost just got busted for breaking and entering. I cautiously got out of the storage area and stood at the base of the stairs, mostly hidden behind the corner, just peeking out. But he still saw me. He waved and grinned like someone's friendly uncle, but I didn't wave back. I only saw this guy one more time after that. I had been walking home from the bus stop, which was in the middle of bumfuck nowhere at a gas station where about 20 kids all got dropped off and were picked up by their parents. My dad hadn't shown up at this time, and I just started walking towards my grandparents' house. This guy pulls up in some SUV and tells me to get in and that he can give me a ride. I tried to picture how well I would be able to get away from him in the woods, and if I could find a big stick to whack him with. Then my dad pulls up. The guy peels off and my dad drives me home, yelling at me for trying to walk all that way. But the truth is, I tried to call him, but he didn't answer. So we moved a little while after this, and thankfully, this never ended up happening to me again. And as far as I know, my grandparents haven't seen this guy since.
This story was submitted by Joshua. Back when I was around 18 or 19, I had a lot of free time during the summers in between school semesters, so I'd end up staying out all night doing random stuff with friends. Not partying or anything, because I was pretty lame, but just about anything to kill some time and be with my friends. I'm kind of a weird guy, and one of my favorite things to do since I was a little kid was to wander in cemeteries. I've always been fascinated with them, and when I was little, my mom would always take me to one near our house that was exceedingly large, that also had an adjoining duck pond. I was driving around at about 2 or 3 a.m. with my friend Christina. We live in a fairly small town where everything closes at 9 p.m., so there's not a whole lot to do. We spent the first half of the night watching some DVDs and wasting time at Walmart, and then we decided we'd go wander the graveyard. We drove to the cemetery near my house, and drove pretty far back into it. As we rounded a corner at the top, we saw a pair of headlights pulling into the entrance of the cemetery. We couldn't make out what kind of car it was because there were no lights anywhere nearby. I got kind of nervous due to the fact that I knew police occasionally patrolled the graveyard at night because there was a history of vandalization and destruction. I was worried we'd get stopped and questioned, and I figured a cop wasn't going to believe that we were out there just to walk around and hang out. This was a huge place, with a lot of interconnecting dirt roads, hills, and loops. It was just a really large cemetery. I quickly started winding my way through the area, constantly worrying that the next corner we'd turn we'd be staring straight at a police car. We start nearing the middle of the gardens, and we notice that there are multiple cars parked on the sides of the paths, but we don't see any people anywhere, just cars. I thought this was really unusual because I've come here a lot at night and I've never seen anyone else out there because the cemetery closes at sunset. We kept driving and we were nearing the mausoleums when I'm suddenly blinded by someone's brights. There's an SUV parked on the side of the road with the doors open and the brights on, and right next to the SUV is a woman in her late 50s, maybe early 60s. Nothing really remarkable about her appearance, but she gives us this really creepy grin and just waves at us slowly. There wasn't anything especially menacing about this gesture, but it was extremely unsettling. Another thing that bothered me was the fact that there were more cars parked around, but no other people in sight. Where were they? What could all of these people be doing out here at this time of night? Something just felt off. My friend and I were both spooked at this point, which normally isn't something that happens. We're creepy people ourselves. I mean, we hang out in cemeteries at night, but this was way beyond our creep factor. I don't know whether we stumbled upon some massive late-night drug deal, or some kind of cult gathering, or what, but we did not want to stick around to find out. I pressed the gas and we headed for the exit. The whole time we were driving by, the woman just stood there, watching us. Like I said, I don't know what was going on, but whatever it was gave us chills, and I have never gone back in a graveyard at night ever since. If you enjoyed this video, you know what to do. If you would like a chance to have your story featured in an upcoming video, make sure you check the description for information on how to submit your stories. I'd like to give a big thank you to Unit Number 522 for helping me out on this collaboration, as well as your patience. Sorry it took a while, but I'm glad we were able to actually team up and get this done. I think it turned out great. If any of you might have missed the other collaboration video that Unit Number 522 and I did, I'll have a link in the description. While you're on his channel watching our other collaboration video, don't forget to subscribe so you can get even more creepy content. I'd like to wish everyone a happy new year, and I really appreciate all your support. In 6 months, the channel's grown from 112 subscribers to over 83,000. I think that's pretty damn awesome, but I really couldn't do it without any of you guys, so I really appreciate all your support. I hope you all have a fun and safe New Year's, and I'll catch you in the next video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.